Good afternoon, everybody. Calling to order our February 25th, 2026 Islamorada Charter Review Committee. Morning, can we please take the roll?
Committee Member Richard Black.
Present.
Committee Member Lori Lalonde.
Oh, present.
Committee Member Craig McVeigh.
Present.
Committee Member Joe Sproth.
Here.
Committee Member Roger Young.
Here.
Vice Chair Susan Raffanello.
Here.
And Chair Ty Harris.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. We've successfully navigated item 1. Public comment. Dave, anything? No. We have anybody online?
We do not.
Thank you. Close public comment. Items for discussion under Roman numeral 3A. Review and discussion of Islamorada Village Charter Section 5, Sub 3, the mayor powers and duties. Although I thought we were still talking about.
At the end, you'd reserve comment for
Right.
that, even though it didn't make the agenda. It is in the minutes. Do we
Right.
need to approve the
Oh,
minutes?
I'm sorry. Keep me on track. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Minutes approved. So, back to where we were. We had reserved, we were having public comment, trying to jiggle my brain.
We had done the motion to approve the 3
Three.
years with no staggered
Right.
terms was denied with your reservation. Then, of course, that any of the 5 who denied could institute discussion and make a motion of any kind.
Right. There we go. Thank you.
Is that accurate, Marnie?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
John.
you all did approve a motion for 3-year staggered terms. That was a vote of 6-1. Vice Chair Raffanello is correct that there was a motion that was defeated to not stagger them, though.
That is not the case. There was a consensus about 3 years, but not about staggered terms. That's where we left things last meeting.
Exactly, that's what I said. Sorry,
Okay.
3 years. There were 2 separate motions. There was a motion on the 3-year terms, which passed, and there was a motion on whether to stagger them, and that motion failed.
I agree with that. That one I agree with. Go ahead.
I think it was 2-5. I mean, 5-2.
Yes. So we were talking about whether it made sense to stagger if you're only doing 3 years because you're going to have a funky election cycle every 2 or 3 years, and whether that made sense. So are we going to discuss again the staggered, or is that horse run its race and we're comfortable with the 3 years that we left off with the motion to approve?
Well, there hasn't been a motion that is passed.
Right.
So we can just not have an action, because I don't think by implication you can say that you approved 3-year staggered when there hasn't been a motion to do such. We've only denied right now 3 years and no staggered.
Right.
And I thought that a couple people, and I can't remember who, Lori may have been one, who wanted to, I can't remember why exactly we adjourned other than a time frame. And potentially, I thought Richard and Lori wanted to talk to the public again and come back for further discussion.
Yes.
And then we took the vote where it was denied, I believe in large part, so we could continue the discussion and make sure we fleshed it out.
I think you are correct.
I think you also wanted some information from Lynn Tipton, which
Right.
I think you received
Right.
in your email today.
Right.
And I think she's also
Correct.
on Zoom if you want to speak with her again.
Did everybody have an opportunity to
Thank
see
you.
Lynn's information? Shame on you. Yeah.
Some of us had to get up really early to do our real
Lynn,
job
do we
and
have
do
you,
this stuff.
do we still have you on?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
And for whoever's out listening to this, it'd probably be good to have you summarize the information that you provided to the committee members for the sake of the public record. Is she frozen?
Particular education and training.
This is how my whole
The
day is.
link directly to the section in their charter that defines the length of the term and the action cycle
Lynn, we can't hear you. You're breaking up.
to providing of the
Lynn, we got about every 10th word. You were breaking up the whole time.
I will see if I can reset the volume. Sorry about that. Okay.
Lynn, it might be your internet connection. We cannot hear you. Do you want to try to call in?
Let me do that audio. I think Frank provided a number.
Oh, we hear you now.
Okay, that's better. I simply sent the link to 4 different cities showing the timing of their elections so that you can see how the seats are grouped 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. As the attorney and I had discussed at your last meeting, several other cities have already done this. Whether you wanted to stagger or not, I wanted you to see some examples of how the charter language looks. And that's what's on each of those linked sections.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I paid particular attention to Winter Park, which I liked. They did not have staggered terms. Palm Beach Gardens had staggered terms. I found it more cumbersome to understand, but at least it was a model of how it could be done.
And one thing that we didn't talk about, we were circling on the 3-year term. It also probably provides not only a little stability for staff, as we've discussed, but also for the village manager position. I mean, you got to change every 2 years. You don't know how that's going to go, which is another reason to keep focusing, I think, on the 3 years as a good compromise.
We passed that.
Yeah.
Well, now we're talking about whether we should stagger those terms or not,
Right.
right? But actually, we need a motion in order to continue discussion with that, I believe, correct?
Yes, we're going to need a motion if we're going to discuss the staggered again.
Okay. I'll make a motion to have staggered terms.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Discussion. Richard, you want to start?
I don't have a lot to add because we've, kind of gone over this. And my preference is to stagger them. I see both sides of it. Seems like, again, quite a few people I've talked with like the idea of staggering, and there's a few people that don't like it, but I could go, my purpose of reference is for it, but I could probably go either way. I see pros and cons both.
Joe?
My preference would be to stagger it, but I am sensitive to making it too cumbersome or making it too unruly to get there. But if there's a way that seems to be orderly, that gets us to a position where we don't have the possibility of overturning 5 people at the same time, or even 4 people at the same time, and retaining at least a semblance of institutional knowledge, then I'm for looking at that.
Lori?
Well, I spoke to a number of different people over this past week with regard to staggered terms. And again, majority were in favor of staggered terms. I know that Lynn had told us previously that 90% of the cities have staggered terms. So I think that is a pretty good understanding of the trend. So I'm still in favor of staggered terms.
Craig?
I've been going back and forth on this, I've been, listening to discussion on both sides, trying to kind of think it out, talk to a number of people, their thoughts. I also talked with, somebody on the Marathon Council, just to get their take on things, and, somebody who's basically living what we're talking about. And they were supportive. They liked how it is working there. Having a little bit longer term, like we've talked about how it takes a little bit of time to get up to speed. And with 2 years, it just doesn't seem to be enough time to get up to speed and then get things done. The 3 years definitely seems to be helping that. I asked about election fatigue, if it seemed like it was bothering the residents, because you're gonna have 2 years of elections, then no election 1 year. So it is going to be more elections. Didn't seem like that was much of a problem. And no problem with that had ever been voiced by any other electorate. You definitely do have fewer turnout during the off year. That's just the way it's going to be. I've heard some people say, well, at least the people who do come out in an off year, they're going to be more than likely a little bit more of an educated voter. So at least if they're coming out, for whatever candidate, hopefully they're, coming out for support of or, against somebody else. So at least it's people who really want to come out and vote. I think I'm supportive of doing the staggered. I know it's going to be a little more cumbersome. I don't think we should worry too much about how we get there. We know, the first, if this actually got approved, there are a couple of election cycles. They're going to have to figure some things out, maybe do some, a 3 year and a 2 year to get things staggered out. I don't think that needs to be obviously anything we worry about. The powers that be will kind of sort that out if need be. But, I think, having the 3 year and staggered, I think is going to help with a lot of stability, with our staff, with the village manager. Hopefully, we're not worried about another village manager for any time soon. But I've heard some people say, with more stability in a council, can also bring better people to the table. Because if you might have new bosses every 2 years, and could get fired right after an election, some people might say, I'm not going to go for that. I'm going to go over here where it's a 4 year terms. And, it's a little more stability. So I think, for all the reasons we've been looking at, I think it makes sense. People I've talked to are supportive of it. So that's where I'm going. So stagger.
Can I ask a question? Is Marathon staggered?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't see that in their city code. I just checked it again, too.
And they had the longest tenured city manager up until last night. So there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, and they did have, I think 2 times ago, I think they had 4 seats up for election, but that's only because somebody had to drop out. So it was a temporary, they had 4 people up, and then the next one, they got back to either 3 or 2. So they got it sorted out after that.
Roger, you got anything to add to that?
I had some similar conversations as someone like he had. I didn't speak to anybody on Marathon, but at this point now, I could go either way. I see both. And it's really going to come down to what the council decides, but I can go either way on it at this point.
Susan?
I said a lot last time, so I'll keep it brief this time. I think that to stagger a 3 year term, you do disrupt some of the continuity, which I could see being both good and both bad, right? I can see both sides of that one. It does eliminate, I think, the council, the budgetary. I know that Ty had commented upon that the budgetary 3 year process would no longer be applicable, really, because there would be no group that would have seen that all the way through. Those are my only 2 additional comments.
Okay, I could have gone either way, but I'm starting to think that maybe the staggered is the way to go, especially for the folks that are concerned about not being able to speak every 2 years. It may be not a perfect system, but you know, at least you get a shot, at least in the next election cycle. You don't like who's in to make a change. And I think it would just be what we've discussed before. How do you start the staggering? You take the top 3 vote getters and they go the full 3, and then you take the 2 that have the least amount of votes, and they would be the ones that would have to run fairly quickly.
I don't like that because that really depends upon the seat
Well, and then the other, remember the other thing.
and
this
who's
is-
running for the various other
and
seats.
The other thing, this is jogging my memory, it will not work with the way we have our 8-year terms set right now. We would have to do it the way Lori had suggested.
I thought that motion passed.
Yeah. Man, I am having a
3
break.
terms, right?
I think you left out your caffeine this morning.
I have enough caffeine this morning,
Okay,
that's
well,
for sure.
got a little fogginess going on. No, because we already clarified that, and,
Yeah.
and we're not using the term years or counting years. We're counting them
Right,
as
we're going to use terms.
terms.
Right. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
So, sorry, quick before going, so do we need the term length, the number of terms and staggered are they all gonna have to go on the ballot together? Because I don't think we would want them to be separate, if I'm correct. Because say our term length passed, but then staggered.
Right,
family
because
Staggered passed. We
I
don't
know
want 2
that
years.
some people had, exactly, 2 years, no staggered, no brainer. 3-year, we've had some fulsome discussion about whether or not it makes sense, and I think there's pros and cons that everybody's enunciated for both. So I think the motion really the staggered needs to be tied to a referendum of 3 years, or kind of a subpart. How would you see that on a?
Do we need to all go together or all fail together? I guess.
I think that's a question for
John?
Mr. Quick.
Okay.
John, can you weigh
Yeah,
in
that's
on-
your preference, we can do it that way. That would be an appropriate lumping together, not a problem.
Okay. So do we have any more questions, or are we ready to take a vote? Yes, come on, Dave.
For what it's worth, there's an organization called Board Source that provides best practices primarily for nonprofit boards. And Habitat for Humanity, it turns out, has just spent a couple years looking at this as part of that practice. And their recommendation and best practice is 3-year terms staggered with a limit of 6 years or 2 terms. That's their standard nationally for all nonprofits. Admittedly, they're usually a little bit larger boards. Don't know how much difference that makes, but typically you're 9 to 13 board members.
Thank you for those comments. Marnie, do we have anybody else that wants to chime in?
No, sir.
Thank you. Public?
We have a hand up, though, in the panelists. Oh, that's Councilmember Friedman would like to make comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We
go
got
ahead.
you.
I just want to first say I really appreciate everything that you all are doing. It's very, very informative. It really seems like we're really kind of wrestling with all of the issues that we've been discussing and hashing them out. And the only thing that I would urge you to do is to come at this not from the perspective of what you think the voters might do, but what you think is right. Because I've heard that a couple of times about what you think is going to pass and what's not going to pass. So my comment is really just come at this from the point of view of what you think is the best thing for the village, not what you think is going to pass in a referendum. Thanks again.
Thank you for those comments. All right, are we ready to call the roll?
Can you repeat the motion?
The motion, as I understand it, is 3-year terms staggered.
What, it was tied to 3-year? I didn't hear, I
No,
don't
no,
think
we
it was.
had already passed
3
the
years
the
we've got.
3-year
3
terms,
years.
the 3-year
So-
terms.
The
So this
motion
was,
is just to stagger the terms.
this was just to stagger the terms.
I just want to,
Motion to
I
stagger
just
the
want to
terms.
give it some context that we're still talking about 3 years and staggered.
But I don't, but if that's not the motion,
But the
that's not what
motion-
we're voting
No, right,
on. We're
right.
only
We're
voting
only-
on
The staggered.
staggered.
staggering, and that's a
correct.
whole different ballgame.
Right.
Right.
So, but the reality of it is if you pass this and John packages all this together, then it's an all or nothing.
Then we'd have to have that be the motion.
Correct.
So that
That's
John
where
has
I'm-
the direction to package it.
Well, that's where I'm going. Do
All
we
right.
want to package this together so it's an all or nothing? Or do you want to package it, or can you package it such that if the staggered is not something that passes, then you still get the 3-year term? You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I
I think it should
understand.
stand like it is, because then we have the option that it's a 3-year term. We've all pretty much all agreed with that. We only had one dissenting vote there. And then the other would be to stagger them. I think they should be separate.
But then you've got the potential, if the 3-year is voted down, you have staggered 2 years, which I think the consensus by and large, maybe 1 or 2 dissenters, is no. That doesn't make sense to do 2-year staggered.
Yeah, I thought the consensus was if you stayed at 2, staggered didn't make any sense. That creates more chaos.
So then in essence, our motion should be for the 3-year terms, the 2-year staggered, and the 3-term limit.
Yes. So.
So are we looking to have me to modify the motion?
That's
Is
what
that
I was going to
is
ask.
that what-
Lori, would you amend your motion?
Sure. I'll amend the motion to a 3-year term, of which there would be staggered terms.
With 3-year terms.
With 3-term limits. Got that, Marty?
Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Marnie, can you call the roll? Oh, sorry.
Okay, so to clarify, we have a 3-year term with staggered terms and a term limit of 3 terms. Correct?
Maker of the motion, that sounds correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Committee Member Lalonde?
Yes.
Committee Member Young?
Yes.
Committee Member Black?
Yes.
Committee Member McVeigh?
Yes.
Committee Member Roth?
Yes.
Committee Member Raffinello, or excuse me, Vice Chair Raffinello?
Yes.
And Chair Harris.
Yes.
And the motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. All right. So now we're back to A, review and discussion of Islamorada Village Charter, Section 5, Sub 3, the mayor, powers and duties.
This item was added to the agenda at the request of Lori, so I don't know if she wants to.
It was?
You had,
I didn't make a request of any of them.
on the first meeting, when you all talked
Oh.
about what your priorities were, this was your priority, one of your priorities. We reviewed the meeting. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to, but I'm gonna note who made these requests so that they can tell you. But
3A. Is that what we're on?
I guess.
I think it was part of a lot of people's. I know it was part of mine too.
Okay, I mean, I don't really.
So I'll take
recall.
the heat if you want.
Oh, no, I was just like, am I having a time moment here?
Listen, everybody's having a tie moment right now. Ty's even having a tie moment.
Yeah, I think, here's what I got written in my little notes. Okay. So I think I said to specify a clear term length, to write, the mayor and the vice mayor shall serve 1-year terms unless sooner removed by the council, instead of the serve at the pleasure of the village council, which is vague and may invite challenges. And I guess the other change I had in my mind suggested would be to include maybe removed by majority vote of the full council at a duly noted public meeting. Again, they were just sort of like little semantic changes, nothing that was really have anything to do with power or duties. That's what was on my list. Why was it on yours, Susan?
Mine was that I believe the mayor should be elected, not appointed. Again, looking at some of the forms or the exemplars, for lack of a better phrase, sent over by Lynn today, Winter Park seemed to have a good solution where the mayor was elected by the residents, by the citizens, and then the vice mayor was appointed by a majority of the council.
Wasn't there one municipality that the highest vote getter in the election was appointed mayor?
I think
don't
there are
remember which one it
several
was.
municipalities throughout Florida that do that. I'm not sure how many of them have the the head-to-head seat runoffs as opposed to the at-large elections, which I think impacts that analysis. Again, I go back to sort of, well, how many votes you get in large part depends on who you run against. And I'm not sure that it is a fair barometer of the overall vote getter being mayor.
I'm more concerned about the possibility that the person who receives the highest votes has no interest in being the mayor at all,
Which is why
or even has the skill set to be the mayor.
Well, and that is a fair critique and one that I would share, which is why I think we should have 2 council members and a mayor election, so that we know whoever puts in for mayor wants to be mayor, and that the citizens elected them as mayor.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that.
Well, we have 5 council members, right? And the phraseology of Winter Park, and we don't have to use the same phraseology, is that you have an election of 4 council members and a mayor, even though the mayor is also a council member. So you have a council of 5, but you have the people who would like to be mayor run to be mayor.
Even though it's not a strong mayor position.
Yeah, it was not in
So
Winter Park
instead of
either.
there being seat X number or whatever, it would be running for mayor, and that would get you the first year. Or is your idea that they would stay mayor the entire 3 years of their term?
That, I think, is up for discussion, but I would say stay mayor for the entire 3 years of their term.
If we're not using a strong mayor system and it's somewhat, it's virtually ceremonial, I just don't see the relevancy at all. I don't.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, other than having the title by your name, it doesn't gain you anything.
It gains you control of a meeting, and in large part, deciding who talks first decides issues. I've seen it time and time again at these city council meetings. And the village council is determining who is going to talk to an issue, decide an issue, who runs the meetings. I saw it in the LPA when I was there. I think in large part does have an impact to the meeting if they're so inclined to do so.
I like that bag of monkeys staying with the electeds to figure it out who's going to be the mayor, like it is now. But because I just see other issues with the 3-year, you're the mayor for 3 years, and what happens if that doesn't work out? Somebody's having, problems or doesn't want to do it, or you find out that they're someone that doesn't read their package. I like them having to actually solve a problem at the beginning and go through that system. Do I think that somebody should be mayor 2 years consecutively? Probably not. I think everybody should have a crack at it if they want it. But I like council having to sort that out. I mean, it starts to kind of show how they're going to work together or not work together, and there's something to be said for that. So we kind of, as the electorate, kind of know what we're getting ourselves into after the first meeting. Craig, you have any thoughts on changing the system or leaving it like it is?
I think we should leave it as it is, especially because it's on a strong mayor position. I think adding that extra, as we've been talking about trying to get our actual elections a little more civil, I think adding a mayor portion might
Make it less civil?
Yeah, possibly. So I think that portion, I think, is, and again, it's good having that kind of turnover, so it's not, Again, whether or not it's gonna be every year or not, but potential of a different mayor every year. I think it's good like that.
Roger?
I'm with Richard on the one part, but I kind of see your point. But I don't know if I want to get stuck with the same person for 3 years as mayor either. I'm not sure if I'd be good with that, but it's pretty much ceremonious.
Until it's not, right?
Until it's not, yeah.
No, I get what you're saying too. I consider that too. I get it. But yeah, I don't know if we want to go down that road yet.
Yeah, because as I understand it, any council member or Ron can put something on the agenda. And we've sat up here and watched them when they're having their, council time and said, I want to add this to the next agenda. And so I think that this position is supposed to be ceremonial and someone that runs the meeting and should not give that person any more power than anybody else.
I agree with the should not, and in large part often does not, and in sometimes absolutely does. But that's just, that's going to happen no matter what.
And to
And I
me,
can understand that.
that's on the council. That's on the council if they let that happen. And that's a fair critique of some of the council if they're letting somebody act like a strong mayor. Anybody have more thoughts on this or want to
Do you want to go back to?
discuss it some more?
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that piece has been discussed. I am interested then turning the baton back to Lori or anybody else with thoughts about it, because some of your wordsmithing critique I found good. But
Gee,
I
thanks.
didn't track it, so I needed to hear it again.
But I don't. But the same token, I think there's in the charter there's a lot of little spaces where we could make some modifications with the terms of the word. But then to just bring a verbiage change or simplify verbiage.
Substantive doesn't make a lot of sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's where. Yes. Exactly. Which
But this one has that inconsistency that drives me nuts, and we don't have to change it just because of that. But it adds some, actually, now that if we go 3-year staggered terms, this verbiage will no longer be redundant. Some of it is like, you know what I'm getting at.
I know exactly what you're talking
It's like, why are you talking that way when it's always going to be the same? Yeah. But the 3 years fixes that.
Despite ourselves.
Despite ourselves, we'll fix something else without needing to do it.
So Susan, let me ask you this: when you were talking about the perceived power that the mayor has, do you see that are you coming to that conclusion in some instances because the mayor is sometimes last to place of votes, and it's like he would be that person, that seat would be the tiebreaker?
No, I think that's an appropriate role for mayor to have, regardless of how he's appointed, to be the last to vote and the tiebreaker. I see it more of, and I see it in committees as well, or any meeting. Let me just branch this out. It's whether it's at a private industry meeting, whether it's at a city council meeting, whether it's at a committee meeting, anytime you have a group of people that need to decide somebody, whoever is controlling who speaks first, who votes second, etc., in large part can control the meeting. And I know that the mayor does not control the order of the vote, but they can steer and control discussion. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's just every meeting is like that. I mean, regardless of your industry or whether it's municipality, private industry, you name it.
Right.
And Ty is correct in the fact that that's only possible if others allow it.
True.
But that is also a fact of life.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this one?
No, I don't really. I think making a minute change that doesn't have an overall is, you know, I think, I wouldn't say a waste, but it just, you know, it's,
Especially in this instance when we're going to have more than a couple of changes that the voters are going to have to vote on.
yeah.
Do we need to have an actual vote if we're not going to do anything to?
I was just thinking about that. I
make
don't,
suggested changes, or are we just moving on?
I think we can move on if we're not making changes, then I don't, John can confirm it, but I don't think we need any kind of motion.
Yeah, if you're done, we can just move on and you don't need a motion to like keep it as is or anything.
Okay, perfect.
Next up.
All right. So, under B, review and discussion of Alamorado Village Charter, Section 5, Sub 5, compensation and expenses. This is always a fun one.
So for risk of getting yelled at again.
That was also Lori.
No, that was Craig and I believe Susan. Maybe just Craig.
Sorry, let's start with Craig.
All right. Yeah, like I think that first night, you know, I mentioned, you know, I think council, you should be getting, you know, paid more. You know, might help attract, you know, some better candidates. You know, so again, it might get shot down. It just was recently, but you know, I think you know, something I talked about kind of one of the first meetings is whatever we agree upon here, if it actually goes through council and goes through the vote, it's going to be up to a lot of us to cheerlead everything, you know, to try to get things passed. So I think, say, you know, if compensation is one of them, hopefully as we're going around, if we're, you know, trying to let everybody know why we made these decisions and educate them, then maybe, you know, with the pay increase, that could be a part of it. So, so yeah, I think we should bump up. What were they getting? Is 1,000?
They're $1,000 a month right now.
Does anybody know what the last time we went to a vote, what the increase?
1,200, I think.
I thought it was 2,000.
Oh, was it 2,000?
Adding $1,000 more a month.
Okay.
$100 more a month there? What you're talking about? For
A different take, as per usual, I guess. Same goal as Craig, which is also, I think, starting to become a norm. But with this slanted view that I fear that a pay raise is not going to attract the qualified candidates. We want people who are civically minded, who want to be in the positions because they want to see what's best for Alamorada occur, rather than be like, I need the extra $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month or whatever it may be. And the higher you go, I think the more it skews the motivation and the desire, and conversely does not attract the quality candidates that we'd look to attract. Even though I completely understand the reasoning on the other side, I think it actually in practice would be the reverse.
I happen to disagree. Imagine that. I think that for some individuals that are currently employed and who are working, or maybe even self-employed, it takes a lot of time to serve on the council. I mean, it's a lot of time outside of actually sitting right here in this room in order for you to be effective in the position. And I think $1,000 is quite ineffective, right? And I think that's prohibitive for some people to be willing to step up and do the job. But I was thinking about, instead of it being a situation where we're trying to highly raise the monthly salary, maybe we could base it annually on a consumer price index change, where they're getting a very small and maybe insignificant pay raise each year, but it's based on the consumer price index versus an actual dollar figure.
Yeah, I was even thinking about a per meeting. Not that I'm encouraging any additional meetings than we already have, but, you know, ever since they bifurcated council meetings into two, that's a serious more amount of commitment of time. Because just physically getting and preparing twice, as most of you know, is a lot more effort than only having to get ready once, even if it's the same material. I've thought that, and this is just a number, but trying to stay close without tipping it too far over, that maybe it should be $800 a meeting instead of, because essentially they're getting $1,000. Well, they're not. They're getting $500 a meeting right now. If you were to go with the assumption that they're having 2 meetings a month.
I guess that's the assumption then, or does
Yeah.
that break down to 4? I prefer the annual broken down monthly, because it gives them the flexibility if they do decide, hey, we're not, Thursday's agenda is not heavy this month, we're gonna pack it all into Tuesday, and they give the proper notice and everything
Right.
like that. I wouldn't want them to get less money.
Right.
Nor if an agenda looks particularly long, and I do encourage them to shut off at a time certain, pack in 6 meetings in a month to get more when it hopefully averages out over the year. But I would not want to disincentivize or incentivize the number of meetings by setting it a per meeting
No,
price.
and I completely agree with that. I just think that they put more work on themselves when they said, hey, let's be comfortable with cutting meetings off on Tuesdays when we know we have a heavy land use agenda, and just do it on Thursdays. But I also think that there should be additional compensation for taking that on, because that is more responsibility. Where the number falls, I don't know, and I guess we can try to figure that out. I like the consumer price index methodology. I don't know if it does enough.
I like along those lines, but to use an index that's well established for salaries and payroll increases, you can either use the federal Social Security increase number as a gauge, which I think is more fair as far as what people in the community would be looking at getting a raise each year, and the right thing to do. I think federal retirees happen to be on the same index as opposed to consumer price index, which has more volatility to it, because sometimes, it can go down too.
Sometimes it goes down.
But, nobody ever is going to be like, oh, well, now we're getting a pay cut. So whereas the government can stay zero for some periods of time, if it does anything, it goes up.
Well,
With the
is
Social Security.
everybody of the opinion that we should be having this conversation to increase? Is there anybody absolutely against having any kind of increase at all? I'll give you a chance, Dave. Come on up.
Not directly in response to that, but I think it would be good to be informed by benchmark information from our consultant. I understand that they have complete information available.
Yeah, that was, after we got through this part of, is anybody opposed to having this conversation, that was going to be my next suggestion. We hear from Lynn briefly and see if she has something to add to this conversation. Lynn, can you jump on?
The league does survey council and mayor pay every year. We do not get 100% participation, and in your size range, I can give you what that range of pay is. You should know up in the Panhandle, it's very common for the smallest cities to pay $1 a year, so that skews the data. But let me get a note up to Wade, our statistician, pull that data, and I will email it to you for your population range. Be glad to do that.
Thank you very much.
You want to go?
You can go ahead.
So I did a little looking into this because just curious and trying to figure this out, and I also asked some questions. And hard to pull this information together, but if you go out in the big Google world out there and do some Googling and move your fingers around, city council member salary in the state of Florida as of February 1st, 2026. The average for a city council member in Florida was $27,500 per year. Obviously some were higher, some were lower. I mean, the only commentary I would have on that is, we are one of 67 counties and probably one of the largest, or probably the most expensive county to live in. You know, you mentioned that, you know, they're now working 2 different meetings. I don't know that the meeting times have decreased either. So now they're working 2 meetings, probably working the same number of hours for each meeting, probably having to prep more for each meeting. I mean, I think for you to really sit here and do this job, even do the job that we're doing, I mean, it's amazing how much stuff you have to read, you know, to come here and understand. I think I'm a firm believer we should be at least where our peers are. We should maybe take that as a benchmark. I mean, what are our peer groups doing? What are similar sized cities doing? And then kind of drill down to what are they coastal? Do they have the same situation as we do with cost of living?
I like that approach. My preference would be to table this part until we get the information from Lynn, so that we're not just spitballing numbers out and burning through our time.
Yeah, we could see it comparable, and I don't know if, I'm sure this information exists in Google Land, and I haven't thought to do it, but we're all pretty aware that we have a high cost of living here, but on what percentage? That might help guide the discussion, dovetailing with what Joe just said. Number one, get from Lynn the information about what our peer cities are doing, but then to the extent, you know, almost like an appraiser does, you got to do your adjustables, right? To figure out what might make sense for this community, and knowing the general, you know, cost of living versus let's pick a county out of the middle of the state, pick Miami-Dade, pick one from the Panhandle, might help with that analysis, is my only thought.
I mean, I was just scrolling through on my phone the information on Muni Code on the like cities that she gave us for the other tab. And just for example, Winter Park is 15,000 from what I can see.
12.6 for the council.
Yeah, but those are 2020 numbers. So we're talking 6 years ago.
Gone up, so.
Right.
Richard?
Cost of living thing is a major deal here. I've put quite a bit of thought of this, because the constant thing that I hear is that we always have the same people that run and no one else goes up there. And to be honest, no one here, and even counting us, for the most part, you have to put, to do the job right, you got to put 30 to 40 hours a week into it. That's about, to be a good council member, that's what you need to put into. And anybody that owns a business or is working a full-time job in the Keys can't afford to put 30 to 40 more hours of work into being a council seat. So yeah, you're only going to get retirees for the most part, because they're the ones that have the time to do it. I mean, there's some outliers there, but for the most part, that's what happens. And then the same people that can manage to come up with the amount of time, are they doing the job that needs to be done? Because are they really putting that much time into it, or are they just showing up? So there's that thought. I know the research that I've done for medium-sized cities, so 50,000 down to about 20,000, their pay range from 20 to 35,000 a year. Our pay is pretty much on pace with most small municipalities that I've looked up. So between 12 and 15,000 is kind of the average for it. The way I look at it is the cost of living in the Keys, and you know, just everything involved with being down here. I think we probably fall more in line with a medium-sized city versus a small city. So my thought here is to go with just an annual salary instead of writing this $1,000 a month, $300 a month, all this confusion. Just start out at something, you know, 16 to 20,000. Put that on there and say that there'll be a annual assessed increase price based on national averages of pay increase, and go from that. So that's my 2 cents.
Roger?
Well, I like the whole idea of paying them a fair amount more. I was thinking that the 2,000, I like the idea of just a salary, 25, not 20. I don't think 20 is enough, but I think we are stuck getting either people with businesses that are at the tail end maybe of their career, retirees, but we're not getting any of these younger people. And there's a lot of people, you know, nurses, attorneys, these young kids making 100 a year, 90 a year, and they do want to be part of this. And maybe that would take care of the extra things that they're going to have to spend money on to give up time to be involved in the council. See where I'm going? I mean, I think there's a whole younger group. I mean, Richard's here. I mean, I don't know exactly how old he is, but I'm encouraged. I'm seeing more and more younger people in the community getting involved, where you're right, it's usually pretty old. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Steve has definitely dropped the median age on the council right now.
Yes,
I
for
bet.
sure. Well, one other thing to add, Susan, I do see your side of it, is if you pay more, you attract, you know, someone that maybe shouldn't be there. But I think as long as you keep
Human
that
nature.
pay within reason, you know, in that 20 range or something like that, you're gonna help the council member out, but you're not gonna attract, you know, Joe Smo working around town, oh, that's 20 extra thousand I can make. They're not gonna run for that. It's just not gonna
And,
happen.
well, if they did the analysis, they wouldn't, but, but and that's why I said that when Ty asked if there was anybody who was not willing to consider a pay increase, I didn't say anything because I am very open to it, but I do think that I would be interested in knowing the comparables that Lynn comes up with. I understand your reasoning for going to a mid-city. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I don't think that a lot of the villagers are, there is some fatigue because I feel it myself with people consistently, you know, our budget is like a mid-city. Well, why? With nobody saying the why part of it. So that's why I'd like to see table the discussion until we get the numbers back from Lynn. And, you know, I will also try to do some research myself, but I would love it if others already had it at the ready, or if it's already something that Lynn has at the ready, for just how, percentage-wise, rough guesstimate, how much more does it really cost to live in the Keys versus elsewhere? Because we all know it's more expensive. I know that when I go to Publix on the mainland versus down here. But, you know, what are we really looking at so that we can calculate an appropriate bump up, not because we're a mid-sized city, but because of our cost of living.
Yep. Even if you doubled to $24,000, which starts falling kind of in some of the ranges that Joe looked at, I don't think we're taking anybody that's not civic minded. I don't think 24 moves the needle into, well, I can stop doing work. I can retire and live on my salary as a council member. But I agree, we should table this until we have some of the information from Lynn, really.
Right, I agree with you too, but based on what you just said there, Ty, I said, I don't think there's any one of us that are sitting here at the table that would be willing to say, oh, I'm gonna quit my job and take $24,000 and serve on the council. It's not gonna happen, right?
Not of those of
No.
us sitting at the table.
No.
But that gets back to my point of there are some who would be like, okay, this is, you know, great, you know, supplement or part-time job, or now I can retire, not because 24,000 is going to pay all my expenses, but it's going to pay enough that I can do it now, even though I'm not civically
right,
minded. And I get it, but that's why I'm saying, all I am suggesting is that if we do come up with a number, we have a rational basis so that if it is
Right.
taken to council and it is taken to the voters who just voted it down, we don't just say, oh, we spitballed and we thought this was the right number. I think we need to have some justification and backup for it, other than we think that, because I agree, like, your work on the LPA, our work here, none of us are doing it for anything. The point is, okay, the council does a lot more work than even this, and what is a fair compensation that strikes the right balance?
And I don't think members of the public have a real clear understanding of how much time and effort these council members put into it. I don't think they recognize the fact that they can't even walk in through a grocery store without being stopped by another resident to bring up an issue or have a conversation about an issue. They're calling them on their own personal cell phones all the time. They're sending them emails. They're bombarded. They're bombarded by the residents all the time.
And
And
they
it's
get
not
the-
not just preparing with what and reviewing what is in their packets. It's also all of the the other interactions with members of the community. And it's time consuming.
Well, and there are hours spent
100%.
with the manager and the department directors. Once the agenda is published and all the material is produced, they all get an invite, because they have to do it individually, but come in, they sit with the manager and with all the department heads and basically go through all the items on the agenda. So, first, for everything that's on consent, you want to make sure that something on there shouldn't be on consent, but then all of the land use items and everything else. So you're spending a couple hours just doing that on top of your own reading. It's a lot of work. And like Lori said, it's kind of like being a doctor. You can't walk to the grocery store without somebody asking you a question about an ailment, So I'm glad that we're going to have this conversation. I would be more comfortable knowing what Lynn comes up with, so that, as both Sharon and Joe have said, that we can justify, if we do come up with a number, that it's based on something. And Lori. What?
It's better than what I'm often called, so I'll take
Oh,
Sharon.
Susan, sorry. Listen. I'm sorry. So we also had, as part of that discussion, expenses.
I think appropriate travel done for the village should be, whether it's workshops, your glad hand meet and greets to a certain extent, et cetera, your networking, all of which is, if it's village business, I think it should be compensated. I don't think this is for the charter, but I also, though, think that if people do those things, they should do a brief report back to council about the activity, what they learned, how it benefited the village or didn't, and suggest that nobody ever go again. Like a brief 2 or 3 minute report. That's not for the charter. That's just my viewpoint.
100%. If you're going to go spend our money and be in Jacksonville for 2 days to learn about tax increment financing or some new thing that FDOT's coming up with, a 5-minute report back to everybody, including your fellow council members, is not an unreasonable ask. So I agree with that, but I also think they should have the ability to do those things, because that's very important that we stay connected to other cities that face the same issues that we have. Any other comments about that?
I think the village has been pretty responsible in taking care of most of our councilmen's expenses anyway. And we know there's been a few that asked for more and didn't get it. So I think the manager can take care of that. Isn't that like your job?
That definitely falls on the manager to approve those expenses.
So.
Okay, so we're gonna table the rest of the discussion on salary until next meeting when we get some numbers from Lynn. What time are we at now? 6:28. We got a half an hour to go.
Well, let's see if we can get through this.
I'm struggling as it is. It was just one of those days at work that there's not a lot left in the tank. C, if we table that, review and discussion of Islamorada Village Charter Section 5, Sub 7, vacancies, forfeitures of office, suspension, filling of vacancies.
In my notes, I have that was a Joe Roth, and I have subset 5 under that, but I couldn't figure out what subset 5 was in that, so. See, I do listen when you guys talk.
Joe, do you want to? Well, I remember, we've talked about the problems that we have when someone either has to voluntarily resign or, God forbid, pass away in office. And as we know, the system is set up right now that there is no special election. It's a replacement by the council, by a majority. And if you recall this last time when Mayor Pender resigned, we spent a lot of time, with the council with 4. And it took a while before that got sorted out and they appointed someone. Is that the system we want? Or do we want to talk about a different system?
I would like to talk about a different system.
Well, I think you need to talk about it in the context of whatever statute applies. That's what I would say, because I think there is. I'm not the attorney, but I think there is. I think part of what I was talking about in 5 was whether or not we're in a different world than we were when we incorporated, and whether or not, you know, being absent means being absent in person or being absent electronically. We allow a lot of people to participate electronically. I'm not advocating that we do or we don't. I'm just bringing it up for discussion. That was my intent with number 5.
So at least on land use items, they cannot vote without being here in person.
It's only
That-
quasi judicial, they can't vote.
I,
Quasi judicial, they can't vote.
yeah, they can't vote on quasi.
Right, but there are other land use items that aren't quasi
Well, I-
judicial that they could vote
Thank you
on.
for putting a finer point on that, but it's quasi judicial items. If you are not here in person, you cannot vote. You can participate in other parts of the agenda. So, I mean, if somebody's not here, I mean, here's the other part of this, as a land use attorney. You are entitled as an applicant to a fully constituted board for purposes of a vote. So you actually have an as of right to request a continuance if you don't have everybody here. That's a given. But I like the idea of them having to be here. I don't like the idea of having people remote, other than participating for purposes of knowing what's going on, but not voting on items. That's just my take on it. I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say.
I don't see any reason to have somebody coming in that way. They need to be here.
If they're voting on
really
something,
need to
I think
be-
they should be here.
I mean, specific, circumstances maybe, but not all the time.
Well, and like we just said, on quasi, they can't vote.
Yeah.
Craig, got some thoughts on that?
Hadn't really put any thought into this before started talking about it, but I think in person, yeah. Have we had many recently? Many council members participating virtually? Haven't been watching meetings.
I think the last one I remember would be Pete.
That's exactly the
That's
one
the
I had
only
in
one
my
I can
mind.
think
Yeah,
of
he was in the
that-
That
hospital
was-
though.
Councilmember Friedman was recently on Zoom when he was on vacation in the Seychelles.
Okay.
I felt bad for him. His time lag was 12 hours or something like that. That was a rough meeting for having that kind of time spread.
How long did we have just for when Buddy quit?
It's not something that's used very often. We do have a remote attendance policy, and it's very seldom that someone will take advantage of it when they don't need it.
I would leave it that there is some flexibility for, justifiable excuses on the occasion that they need to be absent, but still want to make sure that their voice is heard. They are a council member, but it would have to be the exception that makes the rule of being in person. So I'm not sure that we need a charter change as opposed to continued administration of it.
It sounds like what we have now is working pretty well. And I guess the first rule of this group is do no harm.
I would hate to open it up and then you have 5 people by Zoom and nobody here in person. But I do like the flexibility. There are circumstances that warrant an excused absence in person, if you will.
Could you imagine presenting an item in front of the village council and you just have 5 TVs? Everybody's on a split screen?
It'll be something.
That would not be an enjoyable
We can't
experience.
imagine
frankly,
it, but at
after-
some point that will occur.
After
It won't
this-
be in our lifetime.
And after the Supreme Court made clear that you could hold evidentiary hearings and trials via Zoom, I would extend the, albeit an, excuse that makes the rule of being in person to quasi judicial. There's no reason to segregate out this if courts allow for a Zoom proceeding for a full trial. I don't know why our quasi judicial has to have all 5 voters in here in person. Again, with it having to be the absolute exception, pre-permission required sort of situation to be able to participate by Zoom, but I would expand it to even that.
I would not want to have a quasi-judicial with not able to look everybody in the eye.
I don't like to have trials without doing it either, but I have to.
Well,
It happens, and the Florida Supreme Court has said it's absolutely appropriate, and you don't lose any credibility judging. I have my own views on that, but that's the announcement from on high.
Well, the good thing is we're just dealing with village council, and I still like the idea of having them all here. And if there hasn't been an abuse of the policy, I don't think we should disturb it.
And just to put you at ease, you could never have all 5 remote because under Florida law, the quorum requires at least 3 in person. So, because they don't count towards the quorum if they're remote, so you have to have at least 3 people in person.
That's good to know. So are we sort of generally consensus that we're not making a change? Okay.
That's basically the consensus, right? We've talked it through. It's not worth trying to make a change to that.
Can we, though, talk, while we're on this subsection, about filling of seats?
Absolutely.
Filling of vacancies?
Yes.
Okay.
It's my view that if somebody resigns, and we can debate whether or not they knew they would do so before an election or shortly after an election, that's neither here nor there at this point. But I think if they resign within the first 6 months, especially if we're going to 3-year terms, that they should be elected. And I do recognize that a 3-year term would fix the sentence in here that makes no sense about when the seat would be filled. But at the same time, I think if you're going to have somebody resign within this first 6 months, it should not be the council that appoints somebody for the next 2.5 years to fill.
I like that. And I like your idea about the 6 months because I think it preserves some of the integrity to the election cycle. If it's after 6 months, I think we leave it the way it is. But I kind of feel the same way you do about if it feels like they're gaming the system if they've run and that they're going to immediately resign. And I don't know what everybody else's thought is about that, but I kind of like that approach.
So under 6 months, you'd have another special election?
Under 6 months, you would that seat would be open for election again.
So obviously then that would have to be special election, which I know we were, talking about how much it costs to, but
Yeah,
that's,
it's a
that's,
$33,000 shot.
And how many months would that take to have that special election? For which we would have a vacancy.
Probably not any longer than we did this last time. That was months before Anna was seated.
And then, of course, if it's more than 18, if we're assuming a 3-year term
Right.
now, if it's more than 18 months, then if somebody resigns, somebody is appointed to fill the seat until the next generally scheduled election, which is how you get to the marathon 4 and 1, but then it fixes itself thereafter.
yeah, so at least if we got to the 3-year, we would have more elections. It's still, if it fell in the year where there wasn't supposed to be an election, then there would have to be another one. So yeah, I'm definitely not opposed to doing something like this, but trying to figure out the wording because, do we word it could work out better with if it's 3-year terms because we have more elections, there's a better chance of there actually being an election already coming up as opposed to have to have a special election, but having some sort of wording on time left on term or something like that. So yeah, I'm not opposed to it because having somebody elected for 2.5 or appointed for 2.5 years is a bit much. Even 1.5 years is a bit much. But
And I could see, I know I raised this to talk about tonight, but I could also see where, given some of our votes about 3 years and staggered terms, et cetera, might inform the wordsmithing or even concept thought process for this particular provision, so I would like to raise it again next meeting, if possible, with the
Yeah,
other.
that's absolutely, I mean, we seem to be making a little bit better time this meeting, so we have more time to talk about that. We get sunsetted in May.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, we don't.
But at our first meeting, we sort of threw out ideas of what we wanted to discuss, and we had the big ones, which were the ones we have now gone through, and getting to these other issues, maybe putting some thoughts, people's thoughts, flesh on the bone, without necessarily a vote, one way or the other during a meeting, so that we come back the next meeting better informed and ready to vote after having heard why people raise the issue. Because there was a lot the first meeting that people raised that I hadn't thought of, but I found valid and intriguing and wanted to hear more of before I actually form my own thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on that. I think, but I like how we're forming the discussion, and maybe we could talk about it at the next meeting after we've done a little more research on it.
And I'm happy to hear other people's viewpoints on it tonight, too. I didn't mean to cut off discussion.
So is everybody good with where we stopped the discussion on that one, and then we pick that up along with the other item on salaries? Okay. So I think we have time for one more. Is everybody good to discuss D, which is review and discussion of Islamorada Village Charter Section 5, Sub 9, Village Records? Now, who put that one on? Lori.
No, I think Joe did.
I got bad shoulders today.
I am blaming you for everything.
You're the whipping boy when
I
we
guess.
can't figure out who else did.
I'll take it. I don't know that I did it.
I have it as Joe Roth.
Oh,
I think it
Joe.
was just more of a clarification of moving out from the Stone Ages, from printed to electronic materials, the availability of that versus printing stuff. I mean, I think that's minor.
Good discussion item. Probably nothing that we need to touch in the charter?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, wait. I think maybe let's have a question towards Marnie, who she happens to be, the record keeper here. Is there something within the process that you would like to see streamlined or changed, or something that you find is kind of cumbersome and, not as efficient as it could possibly be, that might be better addressed in the charter?
I'm not sure that there's anything that needs to be changed in the charter. The process is generally now that we're going more towards electronic retention when we can. Of course, if something needs to be kept in paper form, we do, but these days there's not a whole lot that's required by the state retention system to hold paper. So, I don't think that changing the charter really would have much effect on our workflow.
Marnie, thanks for those comments. Didn't we kind of move out of the majority of 5, knowing that we have 2 items left to discuss, and we move into, I know this is Susan's, well, I think it's Susan's. E, review and discussion of Islamorada Village Charter Section 8, elections. I could be wrong, but I believe that was one of yours.
I actually have it as Joe again.
Joe!
I don't recall why.
Damn, Joe.
I think we beat up elections pretty good, though, no?
It's general Section 8.
I think it was, you had written referendums, Joe. You had said something about referendums, and that's in that section, so I didn't know if that
Oh,
triggers your mind.
Yeah, so on page 10 of 20, notwithstanding anything in paragraph sub B to the contrary, referendum power shall extend to any ordinance levying ad valorem taxes, provided that the ordinance increases the total village tax rate above 5 mils. I don't know if that threshold is acceptable, not acceptable. I've looked in other charters to see how they deal with that. I mean, right now ours is what, about 1 mil? So that means that they could pass a budget that's 5 times greater, and we wouldn't have the power to have a referendum about that? Is that the way I read it? Yeah.
Just trying to catch up now to it.
So I just wanted to have a discussion about that, clarification, more understanding, and see if that's something that needs to be looked at.
Right. And that's a good one to end on. We have time to discuss that, at least get the beginnings of a discussion.
And just a note in that section, Susan also did want to talk about supermajority versus simple majority requirements.
Yeah, and those go really, again, going back to some of the items I've seen on the sample ordinances or muni codes that Lynn has sent around. There's a list that's much broader than the Islamorada list of what would require a four out of 5 rather than 3 out of 5 vote to dive into a little bit. But I also had on there, it kind of jumped out at me how high the taxes, the millage rate could go, which is, it's part of, I think, somewhat of a, okay, we could pass 4, but we're going to save you money by only increasing you 0.5. I'm making up numbers.
That's okay. It's the example.
But that's what we hear time and time again, and it gets a little distressing. Well, no, you're not saving money. Why is our budget increasing? That goes more towards a budgeting process, perhaps, than a charter, but I think it's really high to not have to go back to the electorate.
I'd like to have more of a discussion on this, but I'm hopeful that a 3-year full budget cycle at least adds a modicum of additional accountability, so so the folks that started the budget are going to end the budget, and that conversation is basically going to stay with that council and not flow to halfway through to another council. But I think it's very worthwhile to have a discussion on, at a certain point, should there be a referendum once you get to a threshold on this. I know Susan and Joe feel about it. Lori?
I have to think about it a little bit further. I can't really say that I have an opinion right now, one way or the other.
Right, but the nice thing is we're setting up our agenda for next meeting, and we've got 2 pretty well-formed issues, and if this ends up being the 3rd, that's probably going to be a pretty exhaustive discussion for an hour and a half.
Not to belabor it, but just put it in context one more time. Your right to formulate a referendum is removed until such time that they approve a rate above 5 mils or at 5 mils. Just making sure that's clear. And that's 5 times what the current millage rate is. So your right to referendum is removed until you get to that point. There's all kinds of areas where we can make referendums and
silly stuff sometimes.
For all kinds of things, but with regards to the budget, it has to be above that threshold.
I think this is a very...
I'm wondering if that threshold's too big or too high, or it should be, and basically, I mean, maybe that's another information gathering point with regards to what are our peers doing. What's the norm? Is this the norm? Maybe this is the norm.
Well, and that's why we need to look at it.
Big threshold.
It does. It jumps out at you. Richard, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. To me, there should be absolutely no reason that our budget should change that much from year to year. I mean, there should be.
Well, at least we should have a say.
Yeah.
If
exactly.
Put the brakes on if that's going to be the case. Craig, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with what everybody's saying. If we can get a little more information, why it was put in there to begin with, maybe there was some sort of reason, I'm not sure, but a little bit of background before we kind of decide, all right, we should stick with this number instead.
Lynn, are you able to give us a little context on that for the next meeting?
sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, we've worked our way out of most of 5 with a couple of issues still to discuss, and we've started into section 8. And one of the things that we're discussing and have some concerns about is the threshold in the millage rate upon which the citizenry of Isla Mirada can call for a referendum, because it seems awfully high before a referendum could actually be initiated. And so we would like a little bit of context with other municipalities as to whether what we have in our Charter 5 is reasonable or consistent with others, or if it's just us being the rebels that we are, thinking that we need to control our tax money a little better.
It is extremely rare to have anything in the charter at all related to the tax rate as a cap or triggering a referenda, just so you know, because under the state's perspective on ad valorem, it is completely up to the council to set that levy every year. And as such, I mean, other than a county cap in Brevard, I'm not aware of other municipalities having the kind of trigger that you have in your charter. I can check with some of our city attorneys and see if they're aware of any other. The keyword search function for MuniCode may help with this. I need to see. It may be too specific to actually keyword search it. So let me do a little digging on this. I did want to mention that with March 2nd, your next meeting, I have got a conflict, but I'm checking to see if our data technician could be here for the salary discussion for you all, because I cannot be. Or would it be okay for that to be on March 19th? I'm very sorry, but I had booked something on the 2nd for late afternoon until 8 p.m.
Oh,
And
don't
so
worry,
I
you're not
cannot
getting off the
reschedule
hook.
it.
We're probably going to not have that meeting and have our next meeting on the 9th.
On the 9th, okay. Then I will
We're
work
gonna
to have that
discuss that
ready
now.
and check any referenda for ad valorem triggers or thresholds amongst some comparable charters for you.
All right, yeah, we're gonna talk about next meeting dates. This is probably a good time to do that.
I just want to mention one thing about the supermajority. While I have it in front of me, I looked it up. Like Winter, just as an example, the Winter Haven one, section 2.08, has a pretty full list of what that municipality at any rate considers a supermajority as opposed to a 3-vote issue. Before next meeting, to form discussion. Now.
Right, so let's talk about meeting dates.
One quick thing to add to that, because we skipped over it, just to discuss next time, is on section 5.8. I would like to discuss the village council meetings and add something to that tab
Okay.
for discussion, just so we can talk about it next time.
Okay,
5.8.
5/8. So I know we're getting into spring break time and other vacation time, and I know that we have these proposed meeting dates. So this would be a good time to talk about those. I know that.
Just a note, they're all Mondays, except for the April 15th, and that's because LPA meets on that Monday. So everything else is every Monday going forward, but happy to take out whatever you want me to take out.
Well, I mean, part of this is kind of estimating how much more work we actually have to do and the number of meetings potential meetings dates we have. So 8, we have up to 8 more meetings, and that gets you into April. That would be the last. I can't imagine that we would need 8 meetings to finish up the things that we have on our list.
There are other things, I don't know if you saw.
Right, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, but these were the most involved with, to me, were section 5 and 8. And then the other things are important, but they're maybe not as in-depth as the stuff we've been discussing on these sections. So looking at those proposed dates, Joe, you said you have a problem on the 9th?
Yeah, I physically will not be here on the 9th. I'll be out of the state.
And Sharon, Susan, I don't know, sorry.
You've done it for years, so again.
I don't know what's going on.
Take no offense. Yeah, I have conflicts with the 2nd. I have medical appointments up in Miami
Okay.
on Monday.
If,
Otherwise, I'm good with the
could
rest
we
of the
move that one
dates.
to the Wednesday?
Which one are we talking?
So the 3-2 meeting, could we move that 2 more days to Wednesday? The 3-4?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's good.
Everybody good with that Wednesday? Okay,
I
so,
appreciate that.
no problem. So
Meetings here?
I can tell you that next week, the 11th, basically to the 17th, I'm on 3/11 to 3/17, I'm out of state as well.
That's spring break.
That's spring break. I would like to leave that week alone.
So then let's eliminate the 9th and then meet again on the 23rd.
Yes,
So we're eliminating the 9th?
yes. And then our next meeting would be the 23rd of March. And then I think we should probably just hold before we discuss the rest of the dates after, because anybody that knows their calendar that far ahead is way more organized than I'll ever
I
be.
see it differently. I see you plan and you reserve and you hold the date, and then you don't plan anything for those
Well,
days because you know you have to be here.
I will have a conflict coming up probably after that first meeting in April. I could meet via Zoom after that, but I will be traveling in a boat through the Bahamas for that month. So,
As you should be.
for work, not as.
Right, I know.
But, so, I mean, I could gladly join Zoom meetings then and partake if that would be allowed, but if we go that far. I'm just
Right.
throwing it out.
I mean, I keep the rest of these proposed dates on the calendar. We don't have the same rules that a village council has or LPA or anybody else. Does anybody have a problem with any of us attending by Zoom if we needed to do that?
I personally would say best efforts to show in person. If you can't and you can
Right.
participate via Zoom, I would be okay with that. I mean, I personally, if you guys said 3/9, we absolutely have to meet, I was gonna say, well, if that's the case, maybe I could, jump in on Zoom, but
No,
I'm just not physically gonna be here.
Well,
Doesn't mean I
I
couldn't set aside the time to do it at 5:30.
Right, I
I'm
just think
not
that
gonna be.
if there was a problem, at least either Susan or myself has to be here as the chair or the vice chair, but everybody else, if there was a conflict, you could do by Zoom and nobody would have a problem with it. Except for if your internet connection's as bad as Lynn's. But I have to say, honestly, I had that happening to me. I had Zoom calls all day, and I had it glitching and hanging up all day. Halfway through conversations, the entire day.
That was that whole, my office had it too. We lost electricity and it glitched
Yep.
and it came in and out. You weren't alone. I got kicked off
I
numerous
lost
times.
work. I lost all kinds of stuff. So I apologize for being a little off, but it was just one of those days. Is there anything else for us to discuss before we call it a night?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that when it comes to remote attendance, you will always have to have quorum physically present. So there'll have to be at least 4 of you physically present. If you're contemplating remote attendance of anybody else. If
Yeah.
you're going to vote and make recommendations. If you're just meeting to discuss and not make any recommendations, then that's a different story for that meeting.
Right. Right now, I think we're going to have everybody until we get into April, and then Richard's going to be working and doing what famous fishermen do, which is going on cool trips and taking people fishing in exotic places. So good on Richard for that. So I think with that, are we done for the night?
Move to adjourn?
Thank you. Second? All in favor? Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.